I think that if you look back over the last couple of months, and, I hate to always drag politics into a discussion about finance, that a lot of that's been done for us and forces our hand in a sense. And I think one of the more interesting things about the last, since the November election or since the January inauguration has been the relationship between the current administration and the private sector, specifically Trump and Elon, and the amount of money that was spent and influence and roles and just that that crazy relation. I think it's a crazy relationship because I don't think it's ever anything like that's ever happened before. And then I think there's not a single person in the world that would be surprised by the inevitable breakup. I just don't. I don't think there's. I thought from day one, I'm like, who's going to break up with who, and when's this breakup going to happen? I mean, this is.
But I think so I think let's
trying to be politically correct here. By the way,
okay.
I have so many comments I want to make about this breakup, but
But let's start at the end. Which is the breakup is upon us.
Yeah.
Not just in the sense of there's been a departure, but in the sense that there's been public commentary, at least from one of the individuals, that is pretty aggressive and critical. I believe the word disgusting abomination, or the phrase disgusting abomination, has been used.
Well, with respect to a specific bill, not with respect to the administration itself.
With respect to the headline, not just any piece of legislation, with respect to the signature legislation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, but for reasons that might be, but for reasons of abomination that may be different than like I felt that bill was disgusting and an abomination, but for reasons that are completely different from what Elon Musk thinks are reasons for a disgusting abomination. I mean, so I think that there's, and you also have to wonder how much of it is personal too, with respect to the rolling back of, all the credits for electric vehicles, among other things. How much of that is personal? So I think there's a lot of different aspects here. How much is personal? How much is for the things?
How much is really criticism of the actual legislation, and how much is just a pot shot at the legislation because of a personal animosity?
Well, and also how much of it is a problem with the legislation that is very different from the problem with the legislation that you or I might have. And then even, the bigger problem with it all is, how is this even allowed to happen?
Right, but I would even argue there's a bigger issue beyond all of this. Can I just even dial it back even a little further?
Sure.
Which is to say, this is what I think. I think we're at an interesting moment in the Trump presidency. I know we are at an interesting moment in the Trump presidency, because we're now at the moment where all of the momentum and the enthusiasm and the bravado and the madness and the press releases and the executive orders and the party time has sort of lost its gas. Right? It's Trump always chickens out as the sort of carnival taunt that circulates in social media, and his number one, the first buddy, the world's richest man, is an open critic of his signature legislation for whatever reason, and we can come back to the distinctions there. But I was having an interesting conversation with a group of Italian business people earlier today who were sort of wringing their hands at Trump's going to ruin everything. Well, how can you guys let this happen? And So there's, and I said, well, I said, is he though? Is he really going to ruin everything? I said, has your business really been ruined at this point? Has your business been affected at all at this point? Really? And I said, and maybe the Trump is really just a concept, a paper tiger, and maybe Trump's power to actually do things is much more limited than he would want the world to believe, sort of a Wizard of Oz phenomenon, if you will. And that Musk's departure is actually a meaningful reduction in his sense of, in the president's sense of his own power.
Well, the stock market would 100% agree with that statement by you.
Right.
But I don't think that's the issue, Dylan. I think
you're saying that's a foregone conclusion. You're like, sure, Trump is not nearly as powerful as, and the stock market decided a month ago, this is all bullshit.
The stock market
can't do these things.
The stock market has already, the stock market, the bond market, they've already spoken. I mean, they don't give a crap.
Moving on.
Yeah, the risk here, I think, is something different. I think the risk here is that there's a precedent that's been set. And what stops there's a couple things. First, Musk has already said, watch out, if you vote for this bill, watch out in the 2026 midterm elections because you're not going to win.
I'm going to primary you. I'm taking you down because
I'm taking you down, right?
Mastermind.
Which listen, as a liberal, I could give a rat's ass what he would take down all the Republicans. Beautiful, go do it.
Sure.
But that's not my fear. My fear is that in 2028, everybody's like, oh, there's a new playbook here. And now, somebody like Michael Bloomberg, who's however old, how old Bloomberg is. I don't know how old, mid 80s, let's say. Yeah. He's got $100 billion in his mid 80s. And he's going to go, you know what? F it. I don't need to run for president anymore in the mid 80s. I can just buy whatever I want. And so, hey, here's whoever the candidate is on the Democratic side. You know what? Here's $1 billion freaking dollars. Here's the legislation I want. Here's what I need you to do for me. Nothing for me personally. Just here's what I want to see done. Here's $1 billion freaking dollars. And then you know what? Bill Gates piles on behind him. And then, and anybody else.
Mark Cuban,
whoever can, doesn't matter. These guys have, they didn't realize that it was just about the money. And they didn't realize that. They jumped on board originally because they thought there was something else there. But now they're all regretting it. So now they're all like, okay, all we had to do was write a freaking check. We write a check for $1 billion to shut up a litigation. All we have to do to control
to buy a fourth airplane and a second boat.
Right. We'll write $1 billion check to get rid of an EU regulatory investigation. We'll write $1 billion check to get rid of, an SEC thing. We won't even blink. But we didn't know we only have to write a check for $200 million or $300 or $400 million like Elon did, and we can own the whole freaking government. Like nobody knew that. Now they know it. So now the price is going to go up, and it's going to be whatever, $300, $400, $500 million. But so all of Trump's antics and all of these, they're going to come back to haunt the whole political system here unless we make some changes, because now Washington's up for sale. And so the bigger issue here.
Well, but why? How is it more for sale now than it was? I mean, we've ever since Citizens, one could argue this is not a new piece of it's been for sale
because Trump set the precedent. He set the precedent. He made it okay. He basically
but you're saying, but I mean, I don't want to get. I would say he perfected it. I don't know. I would say
perfected. Whatever you want to say. He didn't care. He didn't care what he didn't care what the Constitution said. He didn't care what the rules are. He doesn't care about anything. He just says, you know what? You can't touch me. He's untouchable. So I'll do whatever I want to do. Boom, boom, boom. Here we are. And so the precedent's been set. Now, in the future, unless something changes, this is the way. And so the dangerous part about this, who gives a crap what Elon does? I don't care if he does this, that, whatever. If he says he hates this or whatever. the problem, the issue that Trump's going to have here is, how do you respond to this? And in your response, will he think about the future? Because this is a very dangerous precedent. And how this all unwinds, okay, I'm not so sure this is good for the country. Now, will it hurt the stock market? Probably not. Will it hurt the bond market? Probably not. Those markets have already spoken, and at this point, they don't really care.
Right.
And so, will it hurt Tesla? I don't know, maybe a little bit, whatever. But the reality of this whole thing is, Dylan, that the bigger issue here is what's gone down over the last not even 6 months, what's gone down the last 4 or 5 months is forever going to change the direction of this country, and how very wealthy people who are on a mission. It could be a social mission, it could be a political agenda, it could be a social agenda, it could be a business agenda, whatever it is. But now they know the market's been set.
And the method has been demonstrated.
And the method.
The efficient use of capital, because I think other people have thrown money at it less effectively. So sure, I can see that concern, but I'm not trying to avoid that discussion, but I don't think you can. I think that Elon Musk is more powerful than the president of the United States. I think that if I'm a betting man in terms of the Donald Trump's ability to make Elon Musk miserable is not nearly as broad in scope or as in deep in resources as Elon Musk's ability to make Trump miserable. I think we're on the verge of seeing a power contest develop, going to the words of Mr. Musk's child, in which he argues that Mr. Trump is not the president and he needs to shut up. And that the real president is his father, Mr. Musk himself. Obviously, that's a hyperbolic statement, but I think for the first time we're about to see a billionaire go head to head with a president in a way that has also never happened. And they're kind of one and the same, but we're about to see a true power contest between private capital and public policy.
That's what we're about to see. Yeah, that's what we're about to see. And I think if Musk had it to do all over again, he would have just wrote the check. Like he thought he had to be more involved. He thought he needed to do all the Doge stuff. He thought he had to do this and that. But now he realized he learned a lesson. He's a quick learner. He's a smart guy. He's completely screwed up. No question about it. He's ruined his, reputationally, he's destroyed his name and everything. And he'll never get that back. But he still has all his money. And he learned a lesson. He could have just wrote a check for $300-400 million, which is absolutely nothing to somebody that has a few $100 billion. And he could have had everything that he has now, and he wouldn't have to deal with any of the crap.
The real risk, there's multiple discussions because you can go on and on about all the risks. It's fascinating that that on the precipice of a full-on public battle between the richest man in the world and the president of the United States, that the stock market considers it to be nothing but a little bit of entertainment on the side.
Yeah, why do you think that that's weird? I don't think that's weird at all. I think the stock market has put this whole fiasco to bed a long time ago, and the stock market just normalized it. It realized, you know what? These are small men, and with small men with their own agendas, and they're not really relevant to the future of chip stocks, to the future of AI, to the future of the Apples of the world. And they recognized that. And the stock market said, you know what? Why should we discount American technology, innovation? Why should we discount capitalism? And because we have a bunch of small-minded, narcissistic egomaniacs that need to see their name in the paper every minute. And you know what? That's exactly what the stock market should have done. And it figured it out. It took an extra couple of weeks, a month, but it figured it out.
Right. Don't you think American policymaking matters?
I do, but I also
the economy.
I do, but I don't think that I'm one of these people that have never thought that, that for example, the Fed drives the economy. Their politicians can make some horrific mistakes. I mean, obviously Trump with his whole tariff plan, it's beyond a disaster. It's probably the dumbest economic policy in the history of this country. But this shows how strong our too big to fail, and how strong our true ecosystem, our economic ecosystem is. And that's all. You know what? It's bigger than them. But again, it doesn't take away from the real issue here, which is how do we control? There was never a time that we thought that there'd be people out there with hundreds of billions of dollars. There's talk about in the next 10, 20 years, somebody's going to have $1 trillion. Maybe it's Musk. Maybe it's Bezos. Who the hell knows who? Maybe it's Zuckerberg. I don't know who it's going to be. There's no number you can stop these guys unless there's legislation in place or policies in place or some kind of regulatory fences to protect our democracy.
If our democracy is the thing that's at risk, the stock market doesn't seem worried about it.
That's right. The stock market is not worried. Because
does that mean the democracy is not at risk?
Yes, our democracy is not at risk right now, but that's for a different reason. All Trump's doing is just showing you how it's done. He's too old and he's too stupid and he's too lazy to be able to get it done. So he's not a risk. Trump has never been the risk. Trump is just, like I said, he's way too old and he's way too dumb and he's way too lazy. And what you need but the risk is somebody like a Musk who could rise to that kind of power, who's young, who's smart, who's got the capital, whatever else it is, who has the backing, that could be somebody truly dangerous to our democracy. That is the risk.
I see what you're saying. So the risk is that basically you have a competent president who's 55 and equally evil.
That's right.
In the sort of in the puppet strings of a Musk,
right?
Who's capable, who basically rides in the wake of the Trump indifference to the Constitution, but does so in a more effective and dastardly manner.
I mean, personally, I don't think it will ever happen because I think after this experience, one of the things we do well in this country is we fix things, and we're going to fix this. This is broken, and we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it to protect future generations, and that's all there is to it. I mean, we have to fix it, and we will fix it.
Do you have an idea? Do you have an idea? I have some pretty clear ideas on what I think the solutions would actually be, but I'm curious. Do you have a clear solution in your mind?
You mean other than a regulatory solution, other than a legislative solution?
It would be, right, I'll just say it. I mean, the obvious solution for me, having run for office, as you know, having been, is you have gerrymandered congressional districts that are controlled by one party or the other, first and foremost. So right out of the gate, I deal out, 90% of the districts are safe districts, 45, you get half, I get half, and only 10% are ever even in play. Which means that I just work on the extremes in the Republican primary and the Democratic primary, which gives the billionaire the power to because the primary is the election, right? For 90% of the congressional districts, the winner in June is the winner in November. That's something that's easily fixed with some restructuring in the district itself, right? Or proportional representation. That makes money less effective. For example, to ranked choice voting. Instead of having the binary lesser of two evils, have run a preference-based voting scheme, for example. I mean, you can go down the list. The point is there's no shortage of solutions to electoral reform or money in politics and sort of reducing or diminishing the role or value of money in politics. My issue, the reason I'm a little skeptical of what you're saying, is I believe that both of the parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, are equally invested in the corruption of the system to their relative advantage, and that they they may use the advantage when they have their incumbency differently, but they all do the same game when they're out of power, which is talk about how corrupt the person in power is, because the person in power is always corrupt, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. And so it's an easy thing to run on because it's right. But it's just a matter of who gets to control the corrupt system. And what you're saying is, well, now they've optimized. Trump and Musk have taken it to the next level, optimized it, perfected it, whatever you want to say. And and now if you just put competent people inside of if you look at the brazenness of the Trump use of the system, and were to lay Trumpian brazenness with Musk-like or any sort of, let's just say a class A intellect, work ethic professional, that combined with brazenness would represent a level of catastrophic risk that would force regulatory reform, which I think everybody in America would probably agree with. It's very difficult for me to see where that reform ever manifests, because you're going to need one of the two political parties to take a leadership role to do that, and it is directly against both of their self-interest to do anything.
I mean, I wouldn't say that Trump and Musk perfected anything. What I would say is they exposed everything. And there's a big difference in perfection and exposure. And so the way that I would solve this is very simply is just limits on what you can spend and contribute. That's it. I mean, that's the simplest way to get there. In the world of finance, we have similar restrictions. If you work for a licensed firm, the most I think you can accept is $100 as a gift. It's been that way for 40 years or something like that. And, that's it. There is no exception. There's no workaround. That's it. It's $100. And so there are no gifts. There's no takeaways in that sense. So I don't understand why we can't have similar rules in place for politicians.
So you would just go to the Supreme Court and say corporations are not people too, and there's a limit on individual or corporate donations to any political contest of any kind. Full stop.
Well, yeah, the system's been abused. Yeah. Full stop. Full stop.
No super PACs, all this nonsense has got to go. Like the whole spiral of absurdity that was unleashed in 2011.
Yep.
No Moss stuff.
Let's make people stand on their own, and that's it on their platform.
I mean, so how about this? Maybe the stock market's relative strength is not only a dismissal of the potential disruption from Musk or Trump, but also it's a confidence that before a brilliant billionaire and a brilliant president take what has been exposed by Trump and Musk and exploit it to some catastrophic outcome, to your point, it will be intervened. I do take issue a little bit with your suggestion that Trump and Musk exposed this, just because I feel like it's been apparent. It was apparent in Trump 1. It was apparent during Biden. It was apparent during Obama. I mean, it's been apparent for some time.
Well, there's more transparency in the world today than there ever was. So things so it's hard to really say what in the past everything was pretty well locked up and protected. Now everything is much more transparent. That's the challenge that everybody has, whether you're a CEO or a politician or whatever, that's the challenge. But
sure,
we are hardcore efficient market people, efficient market theorists, efficient market hypothesis, whatever you want to say. And so we believe that everything is priced in, no matter what. Like that's the whole premise for everything that we do here at Tasty. Every idea I've ever had, everything I've ever invested in, like everything that's known is priced in. So there's nobody that can look at this market right now and look at what's going on and say, oh, you know what? They just don't understand or whatever. They do. Actually, they do. Everybody gets it. Markets are emotional, but they get it. And they have normalized the playing field because everything is priced in. And I'm sorry, but at this point, regardless of what you want to think, they are discounting, what Musk is capable of doing in the future. And they've obviously already, put premium back into his equities. They're discounting what Trump is capable of doing in the future. And
you're talking about in terms of political damage or sort of structural political damage from either of these people.
Structurally. Yep. And even more importantly, they are already recognizing that this type of relationship is as toxic as everybody thought it would be and has to be addressed in the future because it is not healthy for our democracy. It's not going to hurt our democracy. It's not going to change things dramatically. It's just not healthy for us. It's not a healthy way to go forward. It doesn't put us in the best light as leaders of the free world. As we are no longer at the top of the food chain, and we need to get back there.
And it's a pretty simple fix if you simply cut off the money supply between an individual and the political system.
And you have to, because there's no way to control it in the future, because you're going to get 90-year-old people with, that are going to leave their entire fortunes to some charity. You're going to get the Warren Buffetts of the world, George Soros's, the Bloombergs, Michael Bloombergs of the world, and the list goes on, that have literally hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. You put them all together, they're going to have $1 trillion. And they're going to say, listen, we're going to leave $800 billion to our favorite charity or charities, and we're going to give $50 billion to make sure that our platform is implemented. And that's just, that is
and that's an inevitability without without a rule change. Maybe.
Has to be an inevitability.
That's 100%.
There's just too much money now. It's an inevitability. Yes. So what do we ultimately want? Do we want the future of this country to come down to whether it's the Koch brothers versus the Bloombergs of the world? I mean, it makes no sense. Do we want the Elon Musks, to go up against the Bill Gates and just see who can give more? I mean, none of that makes. That's not a true democracy. That's not a real political system. Which candidate can you buy?
But don't you think America has not really had a real political system for some time? I mean, I guess
no,
it doesn't matter.
I don't agree with that.
My hope is that we've gotten so far into the red zone, because I think we've been on this place for decades now.
No, if I go back over the last 25 years, I mean, I was not a Bush fan, but I think he was a legit politician. Same with Obama. I mean, I don't. No, I don't think that was the case. I think they were very real.
I mean, so you and I are going to disagree on that, but it doesn't actually matter that much. Who cares whether we disagree on that? The point is that we do agree that this is the current example first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, I can go all the way back to. I go all the way back to like Jimmy Carter days. Jimmy Carter, I felt, was real. Reagan was real. Bush Sr. was real. Jimmy Carter was real. Bush Jr. was real. Obama was real. No, this all started right around 2016. And this is what happens,
I mean, but
you say what you want, but that's what turned everything.
Respectfully, we will disagree. But I do think that this is the most current and extreme example, and I'm actually, I mean, I would argue, because I tend to be quite the skeptic of the whole, as you know, I've gotten very cynical about the whole American political system and all the things. And if what you're saying is correct, which I'd like to believe that it is. I mean, well, for sure, it's the most current and extreme example of money in politics becoming an insane sort of horror show. I think that that's a really optimistic thing. I would argue that this is if you're right, and then this is the catalyst to finally deal with money in politics, which would be an incredible gift from both Musk and Trump. They could call it the Musk-Trump rule. and they could live forever in infamy, as like Dodd-Frank or Glass-Steagall or
Sure, whatever. Yeah,
whatever.
I agree. This is positive.
Famous piece of legislation, you could call it Trump Musk, and you're like, well, I'd love to give you $1 billion, but I can't because of the Trump Musk rule.
Yeah.
So I got to give you $2,000 instead.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. This is going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
It's an awakening. It's an eye opener. It's a necessary evil that had to happen in order to fix the system. Now we will fix the system. There's nobody out there that's going to say, oh, this was great for us. This was great for our country. No, it's not the case at all. We're passing horrible legislation to pay for tax cuts for the rich. We're legislating transfer of wealth from poor people to rich people, and all because rich people commit the most amount of capital. It's crazy. And this has to stop. And it will stop because our system corrects itself. We are very effective. We are very good at self-policing, and we will correct ourselves.
What do you think the difference is between the Trump presidency with Musk and with the momentum and the ego trip of having won and all the things that have come from the past 100 or whatever, 20 odd days, and the rest of the Trump presidency?
Well, Trump is the type of person.
Like Trump with Musk and pre-Musk and post-Musk. Do you think there's a noticeable difference?
I think Trump has always been troubled by the fact that people think he's stupid and that they think that he just plays to his base, which they also think is generally stupid. And I think that the attraction of Musk to Trump was that here is one of the world's leading innovators, one of the richest person in the world, supposedly
Mr. Spaceship, Mr.
one of the brightest
Mars,
minds in the history of the world. And oh my God, he's friends with me. Trump is easily impressed by a couple things. Money, obviously, and also something that he doesn't have, which is a friend like Elon Musk. And I think
we'll call it professional admiration. No one has ever thought, gosh, Donald Trump is such a great professional.
No, fine. Professional admiration, right. That's fine. And I think that, smart people generally make fun of him. And I think this is somebody that finally he was like, wow, maybe I am smart. Maybe there's an intellectual revolution going on here where people are going to, gravitate towards me. And I think that he's never had that before. He has built his entire existence around brute strength. He's forced. He's a bully.
Scams and stealing and
whatever. It doesn't matter. It's brute strength. It's now he has an intellectual inside. I think that was the whole appeal to Elon Musk. I really do. And so
what does Trump look like without that validation, but with the very person who was with his validator now being his most famous and most powerful public critic?
Well, that's the challenge for Trump. He's always wanted to surround himself with the prettiest women, the smartest people, but he hasn't been able to attract the smartest people. He's been able to buy the prettiest women, whatever, contracts, whatever you want to say. So, he won't be seen with somebody that he thinks is ugly, and he won't be seen with somebody that he thinks is stupid. That's it. It's perception.
But I guess the concern that comes up for me, and this is just from this discussion, is if you look at Trump's underlying pathology is a desire to be validated and loved. He's a child that was not loved enough.
He needs a dog. He needs a good dog. He needs a buddy.
He needs to be told he's a good boy.
He needs a dog, his best friend, like type. He needs a nice German Shepherd.
Somebody who just says, "We love you," or "It's okay."
Yeah,
it's okay. Okay.
He needs a black lab or something. He could just by his side.
It just loves him all the time. Just thinks he's great.
Unconditional love, 100%.
My concern is that when the sort of psychological or spiritual injury of the person, which everybody has one to some degree or another, but his is just sort of so obvious and so big, that the impulse is to compensate for that with excessive use of brute strength. And between being the Trump always chickens out, Musk is now you're Mr. Big, Musk has abandoned you. All the sort of invalidation, all of his worst fears coming to pass, right? Public humiliation from his best buddy, or public criticism anyway from his best buddy, public humiliation from the crowd, saying, and not just public humiliation, but for the very thing that he's most afraid of, which is you can't deliver, you can't get the job done, right? Like the whole taco thing is that you can't do it, right? That incentivizes him to take excessive action that he actually is capable of taking just by virtue of the office of being president of the United States, that represents up to and including, existential risks, military actions that are catastrophic, bizarre actions with internal police, external military. I just wonder. My concern is that as he gets more alienated and more humiliated, that he has more of an incentive to do things that are more damaging to the world and to the country, to prove that he's not a pussy. Excuse my language.
All that's going through my head is, I think we're good for now, but when Elon starts dating Melania instead of Stephen Miller's ex-wife, then you're going to see the shit hit the fan. But right now, that rumor has not come out. But happy to start it here, but that rumor has actually not come out yet. But when that happens, that's when you're going to see all the stuff you just mentioned happen.
So you're saying this is just the red flag that I raise is rational, but in your opinion, we haven't reached the threshold for totally cuckoo bananas, Trump, military,
just ripping,
foreign military madness.
Just ripping on your bill. You know what? He doesn't care because he didn't care about the bill. He didn't care about the bill anyway. He never did. Doesn't care about anything, so he doesn't care about it. But there's other things in his life he might care about.
Just don't go near his wife, is what you're telling me.
Hey, I wouldn't put it past Elon, and it would make for good TV drama.
Dollar rebound in the works, not to go back to the markets here, but if Trump is less and less relevant, and if the markets are more and more confident, and the dollar is the most injured party from the past few months of madness, and it's the least recovered. I mean, it's come back a touch here, I guess, in the last day or two. Anyway, I guess are there any, if normalization is the path, and the stock market is saying normal is the way, bond market normal is the way, are the less normalized assets, whether it would be the Russell, I guess, or the dollar, are they more
too hard to play here? The dollar's still been a pig. It's down more today. No, I don't think you can buy dollars. The dollar was in a bull market for 15 years. It's been a bear market for 6-7 months. I don't think you can touch it for a long time. I don't think that's the key.
Okay.
So
what about the Russell?
No, just got to trade them. Just trade them. Yeah, I don't think this is a tradable thing, Dylan. I think it's just you have to respect the fact that the stock market is incredibly efficient. It's able to see the future better than any of us. And it's telling you right now that, you know what, we're going to just discount all this because it's just nothing more than noise.
I mean, it's super interesting because literally, if you think about it, the stock market was the first person ever to basically, they didn't use the term, but they delivered the verdict that Trump always chickens out before anybody else got there, right? It basically by May 5th or May 1st, the stock market.
We were saying that
the stock market was like.
We were saying that in March.
That.
I mean, literally saying that in March. He'll turn, whatever. But it's a good it's a funky acronym. It's funny. That's about it. Anyway, we're running
he
out.
Had a lot of credibility for a minute there in April. He had a good couple of weeks where everybody thought he was going to bring the world to its knees.